Good morning. I'm Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, and I want to begin by thanking the White House Initiative on HBCUs for inviting me to speak with you. And I want to congratulate the 86 students in this year's class of HBCU scholars. And let me welcome all of you, HBCU students, leadership, faculty, alumni, academic partners, and community leaders to day 3 of HBCU Week. This conference represents a remarkable opportunity to learn from each other and, in keeping with this year's theme, to deepen our understanding of what equity really means. I think it's fair to say that when a lot of people think about equity, transportation may not be the first area of policy to come to mind. But the truth is that transportation has always been a central battleground for civil rights. In 1892, Homer Plessy versus Ferguson was arrested for boarding a whites-only Louisiana train car. Over half a century later, in 1956, Claudette Colvin, Rosa Parks, and the Montgomery bus boycott made history, leading to the end of segregation on American buses. But that same year, transportation planners behind our interstate highway system began routing some new highways right through the heart of thriving Black neighborhoods in an effort to segregate and sometimes obliterate them. Today, whites-only signs are no longer on buses and train cars in America, but racism is still physically built into so much of our transportation systems and the infrastructure that supports them. It's one reason why this administration, including my department, are working to advance equity across all of our programs and our policies. One of my first actions as secretary was to establish an equity task force to look broadly at our department's racial equity efforts, to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility within our own workforce. In the coming years, this task force will assess our programs, make policy recommendations, and prepare our teams for the historically important work that lies ahead of us. Earlier this year, we made equity a key criterion in how we look at some of our biggest grant programs to support projects that help underserved and overburdened communities. And we're already seeing the impact. In Los Angeles, we learned that officials were considering a project that would make intersections safer for pedestrians in a community where almost all of the residents are people of color. They weren't planning to apply for funding until they heard about the approach that we were taking to the criteria. Not only did they apply for a grant, we are awarding them a proposed $18 million to make this vision happen. We're also strengthening our DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, to help ensure that small businesses owned by people of color get a fair chance to compete for infrastructure contracts. And we're rebuilding our Departmental Office of Civil Rights, which was hollowed out under the last administration. But in the coming months, we have the opportunity to much more, which brings me to the landmark infrastructure package that's making its way through Congress right now. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act invests $11 billion in road safety, which is a racial equity issue because Black pedestrians are twice as likely to lose their lives in traffic crashes. The bill contains the largest investment in public transit in American history, which matters tremendously for the households of color that are 5 times less likely to own a car and twice as likely to depend on public transit. It includes the largest investment in clean energy infrastructure ever. In the knowledge that communities of color often bear the greatest burdens of pollution from our transportation system. And for the first time, it provides dedicated funding for a program to repair the legacy of systemic racism in transportation, reconnecting neighborhoods that have been divided or destroyed by highways and other projects in the past. These aren't just transportation issues, they're racial and economic justice issues. This bill removes lead pipes, cleans up pollution, provides universal high-speed internet, all of which stand to benefit communities of color in particular. Of course, we can't do the work of delivering on this vision without your help. We're going to be working closely with university transportation centers, including at HBCUs, to make sure investments go to the people and communities that need them most. DOT recently hosted a workshop with HBCUs to share insight on the procurement process and funding opportunities. And in the coming months, we look forward to getting your input as we develop a more comprehensive HBCU strategy for the Department of Transportation, including a focus on STEM programs, grants and research opportunities, internships and fellowships, career outreach, and more. The partnership between the Department of Transportation and HBCUs is a vital one. And we're looking forward to continuing this journey together and to hearing your ideas on how we can better use transportation policy to advance racial justice. And to all the students and alumni here today, I hope that some of you will consider joining us, being part of this department in pursuing careers in transportation yourselves. We have a long way to go to fully realize the potential of our transportation system to contribute to justice and to overcome systemic racism. But we can start by this acknowledgement that transportation policy is a matter of justice. And we can work to make sure that equity is part of every program that we undertake, every agency that we lead, and every decision that we make, so that we can create a transportation system connecting everyone to the kinds of jobs, resources, opportunities, and futures that they need and deserve. I'm looking forward to working with you on that vision. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of this conference.